Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Peter Lindstrom, and I'm the Executive Director of SciMath Min, and welcome to the 4th annual. We are working on getting some more volume here. This gentleman here is going to be flipping some switches, and how about that? The miracle of technology. Woo! Hi, good morning. I'm Peter Lindstrom, and I'm the Executive Director of SciMath Min, and welcome to the 4th annual Minnesota STEM Network Annual Conference. We are so glad that you are here. Last year at this time, we were reviewing findings from our strategic planning effort funded by Boston Scientific and debated and affirmed our goals and strategies. This year, we are learning from one another and beginning to build an archive of promising practices in STEM education and collaboration across the state. With the fabulous support of St. Kate's McGlynn Center, we're making this conference available to attendees across the state as a live webcast. Hopefully, not shockingly, we're putting the T part of STEM to work today. And I imagine all these people across the state tuning in are probably in their pajamas, drinking their cup of coffee in bed. Why didn't I think of that? With our virtual friends with us from all corners of the state, we're truly becoming the Minnesota STEM Network, a community of practice and resource for the whole state. One of our live webcast attendees is Richard Hudson, who is our board chair for SciMath Min. Richard, unfortunately, just went through some hip surgery, so he can't join us, but hopefully he's out there on the internet someplace. And St. Catherine University is our gracious host for our 4th annual conference. And I want to extend a special thanks to Julie Michener, Media Relations Coordinator, and Nancy Hendrickson, Director of Academic Computing, who have been working with Ann Hornickel 24/7, I think, since January to put this all together. So can they stand? Let's recognize their efforts today. I'm now going to pass the microphone on to our host to welcome us and invite our sponsors to the podium to give a few words of welcome. Please welcome Nancy Ying, Yvonne Ning, Interim Executive Director of the National Center for STEM Elementary Education here at St. Kate's.
I feel like I've just been given the laurel wreath of the Olympics or something. Welcome everyone, both here and across Minnesota. As the Interim Executive Director for the St. Catherine University's National Center for STEM Elementary Education, yes, we have long names here, I would like to welcome all of you to St. Catherine University. Peter, you're a lot taller than me. I had to move that down. STEM education at St. Catherine University prepares tomorrow's scientists, mathematicians, and engineers to lead and influence in a complex global community. We do this with a strong liberal arts foundation and programs that prepare students for careers and post-baccalaureate study in biology, chemistry, biochemistry, computer science, engineering, mathematics, physics, and psychology. The National Center for STEM Elementary Education has created a successful STEM education model for in-service teachers, some of which are going to be presented here, co-taught by education and science faculty. St. Kate's professional development programs offer proven strategies and a deep understanding of state and national standards and assessment tools to help teachers transform the way they engage students in the classroom. As a former faculty instructor in the both pre-service and in-service, as well as now the current director, I welcome you. I welcome all this opportunity for all of the brain trust of Minnesota to get together and share all of this knowledge and share all this enthusiasm. So I hope that you find today inspiring and informative and that you enjoy our beautiful campus. And it's a nice day today. So. Sorry, Peter.
please help me welcome Marilee Grant from Boston Scientific. Just don't touch this thing.
All right, I think I'm all set. Welcome, everybody. We are very pleased to be here today and to support this great network. I think we have been here since the founding of the network several years ago and are so impressed with the grassroots of it all, how everyone comes together for a common goal, regardless of what sector or segment you are representing. And it's very impactful, and that's how change happens, is if we can all come together. I am going to be sharing with you today a little bit of information in regard to a project that we are working on that is aligned to the strategic planning that happened last year. One of the things that came out in the strategic plan for the Minnesota STEM Network was the fact that there's a need for data. Data that we can all utilize, data that we can work together to put into action. So I wanted just to lead you through a project, and just a moment here. There we go. The project is called Cradle to Career Continuum, and Boston Scientific is proud to sponsor this work, but certainly not the sole owner of this work. It really is a collaborative. So what's behind this? Really, we all know that there are a lot of challenges that we face in STEM education. We have achievement gaps, or standards gaps, as people refer to them. We also have aspiration gaps that are evident even as early as elementary school. We have definitely workforce need gaps. There's a gap between what we are seeing graduating from post-secondary and from high school and what we need in the workplace. And we also don't really have a shared framework for how we think about this. There were a lot of great work, a lot of great programs, a lot of great intentions, but we don't really have a plan for where are we going and what are we trying to do collectively. And we also don't really have a central repository for data. I think we can all cite sources or research studies, surveys that have been done, but really there's not a central repository to find that information or things that have been vetted to know that they're scientifically accurate and sound. And so really, as stakeholders to STEM education, we all need information in order to make great choices and to target our resources in the most effective way. So the goals of this project really are to provide that cohesive framework for STEM education in Minnesota, from cradle, meaning pre-K, all the way to career. And when we started this project, it was early career, and feedback was pretty strong that it needs to be mid-career, because we're also seeing people fall out of the STEM continuum mid-career or early career. We also wanted to create a place where we can share information, where it can be a repository for data that we can all refer to and provide us all knowledge for the decisions that we need to make. And then also, in order to address the gaps, data is just data unless it's actionable and we do something with it. So we want to make sure that what we are looking at actually can move us forward and change the equation. Strengthening our STEM workforce and economy is obviously the output of this. If we have a stronger input in our education and the opportunities for students, it will drive economic strength and also workforce development. So who was behind this? Certainly we were able to sponsor this, but there was a great list of co-conveners that represented everything from K through 12 to business. Margaret Anderson Kelleher as the executive CEO, actually, of Minnesota High Tech Association, Rose Chu from Metropolitan State University, Doug Paulson from the Minnesota Department of Education, and then also Paul Matesich from Wilder Research. We had an advisory committee with over 15 segments represented, and we had 70 committee members who were invited to participate. We've had a couple of sessions where we've gotten together in person to really do some heavy lifting around the data and the work. We've also received a lot of emails, data, information, connections and contacts outside of Minnesota through the 70 committee members. And then we also had an advisory core committee that was a smaller group that really vetted through all of the information, gave guidance, made sure that we stayed on track and were true to the project, as well as accountable to the input that we got, that we stayed true to that. And I want to say a huge thank you to the people on this list, because they really have been doing a ton of work to make this possible. And I also wanted to call out Karen Moore from Wilder Research, who has done the legwork behind all of this. And I will tell you, I don't know anybody, I have never met anybody who could hear all of these really big conversations and then be able to pull it all down into meaningful logic model with data that supports it. So kudos go to Karen and Wilder Research. So what you'll see coming out of this project is a logic model. It's embedded in sound data and a lot of data review. It carries us through early childhood all the way through mid-career. You'll also see an interactive visual, and this is just a small draft. It's definitely moving, so it won't look exactly like this when you all see it. But moving us through the continuum from early childhood through mid-career, there will be indicators that we can gather every year. They'll be updated with the new information. They'll be able to be pulled by race, ethnicity, some of them by region, gender, socioeconomic. So you'll be able to pull the data in lots of different ways for each step in the continuum. We also will provide benchmarks of where are the best-in-class practices that have actually moved the needle so that we can all emulate those, as well as more of a narrative behind the gaps and the data. We also provide resource links. You can't put everything all on one page or it will overwhelm anyone who takes a look at this. So there will be links if you want to deep dive into data and you want more information, you can click over and get as much data as you want. And the other piece of this, which I think is just vital, is that this is not intended to be a small little project that sits on a shelf somewhere or one set of people use it. This is really built for all of us to use. All of the information will be usable by other sites, by other organizations. Minnesota Compass does this already on their website, where you can use graphs and information that they have there. And our hope is that anyone who's interested in using this is able to take the information and do with it what they need to. So that's an invitation to all of you that when this is done, that take a look at how you might be able to utilize it. I think two other things is that we want it to be obviously a resource for any STEM stakeholder, but we also want this to provide us a top-line talk track for people who aren't as embedded in the STEM fields or this conversation, so policymakers, parents. We want to be able to have it in such a way that you'll be able to utilize this information as well in the communities that you talk to. And where it will reside is on Minnesota Compass. There will be a session today, I believe it's over the lunch hour, in regard to Minnesota Compass if you want more information. This is a site about indicators that will allow you to look at economy, transportation, youth development, education, and that's maintained every year on the health of Minnesota. There will be a new STEM section of Compass, and this information will reside there and be accessible there as well, and then continually improved over time. I will say the other piece of this is as new research and data comes available, we will be able to put this back into the site, so it should be growing and provide more depth over time. So for more information, there will be a breakout session today, session 4 at 2:15, that Karen will be leading, that will deep dive more into the indicators and to the information and benchmarks. So if you'd like to join that, we'd love to have you there. And then we'll also have a Boston Scientific table out here where Minnesota Compass and Wilder Research will be there with some of the information about the project if you aren't able to attend the session. So with that, I would like to then, let me see what time it is. Give you a short break. Is that correct, Peter? Okay, I'll pass it over to Peter then.
Please help me welcome Don Weinkauf from the University of St. Thomas, Dean of the Engineering School.
Can I just hold it like this, Peter? Is that fine? I'll make my comments very brief. First of all, thank you. Welcome to this great conference, and I hope you're energized and engaged by the discussion here today. I couldn't stand before a group like this without thanking you for your work. It's because of all the programs that we have and all of these different activities that are going on. Ultimately, it boils down to people like yourself who are going to influence someone in the high school or in junior high or in grade school that a STEM path is the right path for them. It's someone like yourself who is probably instrumental in influencing almost all of the engineering students that come to the University of St. Thomas. One of you influenced me, one of you influenced the student that I'm going to meet with this afternoon thinking about engineering. And while we're talking about that conversation quickly where we meet these new engineering students coming into the University of St. Thomas, I want to leave you with somewhat of a challenge, because every time I meet with an engineering student, I say, so why engineering? And they say, well, someone told me that I was really good in science and math, and I thought I should be, and they said, well, maybe you should be an engineer. And I'll tell you what, this morning at breakfast we were talking about what is a successful STEM initiative, a successful STEM program. And I want to just maybe provoke you with this idea that with these hundreds of conversations that I have with potential young engineering students coming to my office and talking about being an engineer, I would love to hear, and I would define it as success, if one of those conversations started like this. So why engineering? I would love that student to say, well, you know, I was elected captain of my football team, and so my coach said, you ought to be an engineer. Or the art teacher said, that's an amazing piece of work. Have you ever thought about being an engineer? Or I was the captain of the debate team, and we won the state competition. Did you ever think about being an engineer? And I think those are the kinds of things that we'd like to see emerging from our conversations here. Part of that problem, of course, though, is that there's only 24 hours in a day. And knowing my daughter who's in high school, I know how full her schedule is. And if I said, let's put one more thing in there, I'm sure that there would be a problem. And so part of your challenge is to create these engineering students who have these, or STEM educated students who have these interests, who have these passions, but are much perhaps even broader. Because those are going to be the great scientists, and those are going to be the great engineers, those that have another dimension to them. So that's your challenge, is that you're going to be adding something to a student's life in so many ways, figuratively and literally. And how do you do that while keeping the balance of a person that's going to become a great leader in a science or engineering discipline? And I think that that's one of the philosophies that we have at the University of St. Thomas, is that it is the whole person. It is the complete person who's going to be a great engineer. And I think that that's where we want to keep our focus. As a part of that, we have started our graduate engineering educator certificate at the University of St. Thomas, because we want to equip you with the tools that it takes to see and recognize that future great engineer in your classroom, and to facilitate and to basically engage that student in a level that they need to be engaged at. So if you're interested in that engineering education certificate, I believe there's information on the table outside, and Deb Besser, who's an extraordinary director of this program, is just a fantastic person and an energized leader that you should approach and talk about. With that, I'll leave my comments brief. I want to thank you, and again, thank you for your work.
And now, hopefully, the technology works okay. We're going to hear just a brief video from Senator Amy Klobuchar. And I'm told that for those of you listening on webcast, that it's embedded on the site, and you should be able to just click it now or at any time you want.
advances of STEM in our secondary schools and our higher learning institutions. When Innovate America Act doubles the number of STEM-based schools, so our young people remain ahead of the curve to get the training and certification that they need before they get to college. As we know, these are critical science, technology, engineering, and math courses that are so important to fields like high tech. Our entrepreneurs, small and large companies, are all innovative, and these workers with education in STEM fields to fill the open jobs that allow their businesses to grow. I want to end by inviting you to my office in Washington. If you're ever there on a family vacation and you're there on business, check it out, make sure everyone's productive. But on Thursday, we invite the entire state of Minnesota to breakfast. If you're really lucky, we'll come the day that we have a stamp problem. Walking to my office will be a drawing. It's a drawing of a woman who's holding something in her hand, handed to her by an angel. It's the planet Earth. And the words in the picture read, "In my dream, the angel struck and said, we failed this time, it will be a failure of imagination." And then she placed the word gently in the palm of my hand. Well, I know there is no lack of imagination with the students in Minnesota. I know there is no lack of talent or innovation or initiative. By lighting the spark in the hearts and minds of young Minnesotans, you are truly handing our world off to hand and to handle to the next generation of innovators. That's what it takes to lead our country. You are such a major part of it. Thank you for what you're doing, and your dedication to education, to training our students. Have a good time today. You deserve it.
Well, they teach you in Executive Director School 101 to thank your sponsors time and time again. So let's thank our sponsors, Boston Scientific, our wonderful host, St. Kate's University and its National Center for STEM Elementary Education, and the University of St. Thomas Center for Pre-Collegiate Engineering Education. They make today possible, so thank you to all of our sponsors. And I just want to give you a minute or two, just a few minutes, about SciMath Min and a little bit about our history and what we do. First of all, we couldn't do hardly anything without our partners. Truth be told, we're a pretty small operation, and so we rely on all of us working together, including the Department of Education, the Minnesota Council of Teachers of Math, Minnesota High Tech Association, Minnesota Independent School Forum, Minnesota Science Teachers Association, Minnesota Association of Secondary School Principals, the Minnesota Technology and Engineering Education Association, and the University of Minnesota. And I can't forget our corporate supporters and partners and higher ed supporters as well, and others, foundations. We've had many partners throughout the years, and I'm sure I'm missing a few on this slide. We're blessed to have corporate support, strong links to informal educators, and both public and private education institutions. So let's just take a look back for a second. We're 20 years old, SciMath Min. We're out of our teenage years, we're heading into our 20s, and we have a lot to be proud of. We're big into stakeholder gatherings like this one. And you may have also attended over the years our policymaker briefing. This past February, we had Stephen Pruitt, Vice President of Achieve, Inc., and he came to talk about the initiative he's leading, the Next Generation Science Standards. And so not only did we have the policymaker briefing, but we also had Stephen Pruitt to the Capitol testifying to legislators about what to expect with the Next Generation Science Standards, something that they found very valuable. SciMath Min is also heavily involved, speaking of Next Generation Science Standards, in standards and in frameworks We've been very supportive of the Department of Education being heavily involved in the next generation science standards. We're also very involved in research and analysis. So I suspect many of you are familiar with the TIMSS report, Trend in International Math and Science Study. And SciMath-Min has been involved for several years looking at the results of the TIMSS report as a nonpartisan, a non-biased entity that can look at this report and say, okay, what does this mean for Minnesota schools? And finally, it's STEM Day at the Fair. Perhaps the one event that we do that is just super fun, super hands-on, engaged activities for kids, 15 to 20 different exhibitors, the first day of the fair, and we're looking for exhibitors, as a matter of fact, for this year. So Tim Barrett, where are you, Tim? Tim's very involved. Right there, Tim, stand up. If you are a company or informal educator, you want to show off some whiz-bang stuff to kids to get them interested in STEM, talk to Tim and talk to Cheryl. There she is, right there, Cheryl Moeller also. Very good. What are some other things that SciMath-Min are involved in? First of all, the Minnesota STEM Teacher Center and its comprehensive online collection of frameworks for math and science. And I have to thank the Department of Education for its financial support as well as its guidance, and single out Mike Lindstrom. Mike, are you in the room? He was here earlier. Mike and Sally Stanford have been heavily involved in creating this STEM Teacher Center, as well as a small army of educators helping to put this together. And then, of course, our second big initiative, the STEM Network. And it's an absolutely crucial initiative to expand the activities of SciMath across the state. And we can thank our fearless leader of the STEM Network, Ann Hornicle, who I know is in the room because I see her in back. Ann, can you wave to everybody? Let me talk about the STEM Teacher Center for just a second. The frameworks are a unique, searchable collection of information that helps teachers implement our state standards, all online at the website that hopefully you can read on the slide. And it's www.scimathmin.org. You'll be able to find the STEM Teacher Center. Let me show you quickly an example of what it's all about. Here's standard 8.3.2.1. I'm sure you're all familiar with that one, right? The sun as an energy source. I think we just learned yesterday, didn't we, that the sun still occasionally shines on Minnesota? It's still up there in the sky, right? I want to draw your attention to the bottom of the slide. That's where you'll see all of the dimensions that the writing teams added to each one of the standards. There's an overview and sections on misconceptions about the standard, a short vignette, resources, assessment information, and differentiation for varied student needs, and even activities for parents. Mike Lindstrom tells me that there's 5,000 pages of materials on this site, and that it gets 60,000 page views each month, primarily from Minnesota teachers. So it's very popular, and it's being widely used. Let me spend a minute on the network. As I mentioned, a critically important project, an initiative of SciMath-Min. It's not a separate organization, now in its 4th year, and it's really broadening the reach of SciMath-Min across the state. And we have ambitious goals for the growth of the network in the years ahead. Through the support of a Bush Fellowship, Ann Hornicle has been working with regional STEM stakeholders on establishing regional networks. Most every part of the state has been reached with the greatest degree of development in northeast Minnesota and southwest Minnesota, and in the Fargo-Moorhead region. Anne has presented the vision of the network to over 325 STEM stakeholders during her fellowship, and will continue this work in her position at the University of Minnesota after her fellowship ends in July. Northeast Minnesota held a regional meeting last fall which attracted over 100 STEM stakeholders, and among the efforts featured at that meeting were the Hibbing Engineering Advisory Committee, led by business leader Tom Jamar. Tom, I believe you, I know, sat next to you this morning. There he is right there. If you could stand up and let's recognize Tom. Tom's going to present the amazing work that they've been doing up on the range at 10:45 session this morning. So while our network advances collaboration and best practices, it's incumbent upon all of us to measure our progress. And we heard from Mary Lee Grant already about the fantastic activities that's going to be taking place now and in the near future on Cradle to Career. So that's a little bit about SciMath Min, and I think Mary Lee, you're going to introduce our keynote speaker, and so I'll welcome back to the stage Mary Lee Grant.